So let's go.
In cases of doubt, the standing orders of the Assembly shall be interpreted in light of the relevant usage and practices of the House of Representatives.
Okay, so this is a screenshot of the section of the standing orders of the Tobago House of Assembly Martin is referring to. It's called Section 92. Of course, it's a little small on the screen, so I've copied and pasted it in a format that's easier to see on the screen. So the question is, to what does the phrase usage and practice refer? The usage and practice phrase is in reference to the use and practice of the House of Representatives in terms of how it conducts its business. In other words, the usage and practice of the House of Representatives standing orders. So if the THA for some reason didn't cater for some scenario that comes up in the day-to-day running of the House via its own standing orders, it will consult with those of the House of Representatives. Now, if for some reason you happen to still believe that I may be misreading it, meaning that you believe it's possible that Section 92 of the Standing Orders of the Tobago House of Assembly is asking that in matters where there is doubt, the THA should refer to the T&T Constitution, rather than my suggestion that it is actually saying to refer to the House of Representatives Standing Orders, then I would advise you to take a look further down the graphic to what's written in yellow. As before, it's difficult to read, so I've rewritten it for you so that it is easier to read, and I've also highlighted the section in yellow in bold for you. It says, no restrictions which the House of Representatives has introduced by standing order, blah, blah, blah. So notice it didn't say no restrictions which the House of Representatives has introduced by law. It says introduced by standing order. And it says so because what it's talking about is one set of standing orders versus the next. So we are talking about one body, the THA, employing from time to time another body's rules for running its day-to-day business. We are not talking about consulting the laws that govern that body to then be applied to ours, as Martin has asserted. As a matter of curiosity, let's see if the House of Representatives standing orders says anything of a similar nature. So it says here, in any matter not provided for in these standing orders, resort shall be had to the usage and practice of the House of Commons of the United Kingdom, which shall be followed as far as they may be applicable to this House, and not inconsistent with these standing orders or with the practice of this House. Sound familiar? So if for some reason a case or scenario that has never been seen occurs in the running of the proceedings of the Trinidad and Tobago House of Representatives, it will defer to the standing orders of the House of Commons. For those who are not sure, that's in the UK. By now, you should be reasonably assured that the House of Representatives is surely not consulting the laws of the UK. And so in the same way, we are also not consulting the T&T Constitution either. Because as you can tell, we have used the same phrasing almost word for word, and that is because they have the same meaning. So having dispensed with that, let's hear from Martin again.
So, in other words, does that trump this to say, well, look, the fact that the THA Act is silent on it, can we use the standing orders in this way to bring in the relevant provisions of the national parliament to say, look, under the Constitution, by Section 49(2)(e), the members of the THA who no longer belong to the party which elected them to office must resign?
So there are two issues with what Martin just said. One of which I think I may have already addressed when I distinguished between the law, the THA Act, and the Constitution, and standing orders. So let's deal with the part of the clip that says, can we use the standing orders in this way? To be clear, you cannot look to standing orders for definitions, only procedures. And the definition in question is, how does one become removed as an assemblyman? not how does one be removed as an assemblyman if he resigns his party. The other part of what Martin asserts that is problematic is the idea that the THA is silent on what happens to the seat of an assemblyman if he leaves the party he originally was a member of when he or she won their seat. And I think it's problematic because if I list the ways you can be removed, then by definition you cannot be removed any other way. The fact that I haven't commented on all the ways you cannot be removed should not be characterized as silence. At any rate, seeing that we are here, let's tackle this so-called silence to see if it's actually deliberate, which I think is the point Martin may be trying to get at. To do so, I'll start with taking a look at all the occasions where the word party is used and see if that can help us make a determination. The first instance of the appearance of the word party in the THA Act is in section 19(2)(a), where it says, "The President shall revoke the appointment of a councillor on the advice of the person or party which nominated him, or by reason of any of the matters set out in subsection 1. Okay, now let's look at the second time the word party is mentioned. In section 21(5), it says, "Where the appointment of a councillor is revoked or vacated, the party that, or persons who, as the case may be, nominated the councillor shall nominate a person to be appointed thereto at the meeting of the assembly next following the revocation or vacation of the appointment." So now let's look at the third and last time the word is used. In section 55, it says, "Legal proceedings pending immediately before the coming into force of this act by or against the former assembly may, on the coming into force of this act, be continued by or against the assembly as the party to the proceedings instead of the former assembly." Okay, so let's make some observations. Firstly, the third occasion isn't about a political party. It's really talking about the fact that in spite of the fact that there may be a new assembly, presumably one that was just installed because of an election, this new iteration of the assembly will automatically become part of whatever pending legal proceedings that previously involved the assembly. So if I sued the assembly, I didn't sue the one before the election. I sued the assembly, and that lawsuit is still valid. With respect to the second and third occurrences of the word party, it is clear that whomever wrote the entire act was fully aware that people may come into office as independents or as members of a party. And this point is very relevant to the discussion of the supposed silence of the THA on the matter of what happens if an assemblyman leaves the party he won the election with. So let's dig a little more. Notice that in the first instance, where the word party is used, it is saying that the councillor can be removed by the advice of the person or party that nominated him. In other words, you were not elected. Someone put you there, so that someone can choose to put you out. But if you look closer, you'll notice that above that is the very section that this entire discussion is about. It is section 19(1), and it spells out exactly the 4 conditions under which an assemblyman can be removed. And they are, if that assemblyman dies, as in A; B, if that assemblyman submits a written resignation to the presiding officer, etc., etc., or C, is without the leave of the assembly continuously absent from Tobago for more than 90 days, or from 3 consecutive ordinary meetings of the assembly, or D, ceases to possess any of the qualifications required by section 15(1), or is or becomes disqualified from being a member for any of the reasons set out in 15(2). So those are the reasons. The question is, were these 4 conditions, and only these 4 conditions, deliberate? Well, in this very document, literally right after defining how an assemblyman can be removed, where no mention is made of being removed on the say-so of the assemblyman's party. The definition of how a councillor can be removed follows. And in that definition, the framers tell you that a councillor can be removed on the say-so of his or her sponsor, be it a party or a person. So in the former case, with the assemblyman, it doesn't say so. But then right after, with respect to the councillor, it does. Yet some are suggesting this was an oversight. Perhaps ironically, I think the best evidence of how purposeful this was comes from Mr. George himself in this, the last clip I'll play from him. And yes, he does seem to be having a little bit too much fun with this, hence the question about his boredom.
But the interesting aspect of it is that the THA Act appears to have been specifically silent on this point, even though it was drafted after this 1978 amendment to the Constitution. So, in other words, in our Constitution in 1978, we made this amendment for what is known as the crossing the floor provision. Right? So, in other words, if you cross the floor and you leave your party or you're expelled from your party, you have to give up your seat, a by-election is called, etc.
So you heard that? Yes, the very Crossing the Floor Act, written in 1978, to which Martin George refers, was put into the Constitution because it wasn't there before originally. And from this, you can glean at least three things. One, that even after what was surely a landmark piece of legislation only 2 years before, as you know, the THA Act was written originally in 1980, A.N.R. Robinson, who had by then been a fairly seasoned politician, who had occupied the heights of political office, simply refused to saddle our THA with the same kind of thing, on purpose. Number two, if you want to change the law, you change the law. You don't try to fool people by telling them that standing orders can somehow replace law. And three, probably the reason such a law wasn't there in the beginning is because that which we copied from England didn't include it in their version of the Westminster system. Indeed, up to this day, there is no such law against crossing the floor in the UK. None. So do you still believe the THA is silent on the matter, as Martin would have you believe? Or is the THA pretty purposeful? For my part, I don't believe the act is silent at all. In fact, the act is loud and clear if only we would listen.